If you are familiar with my channel, you know that I have covered several splatterpunk books, and although I love them in a way, the biggest emotion you will feel when reading them or watching these videos is disgusted. However, today I have a book that is adjacent to splatterpunk that I feel has a strange sense of beauty to it somehow. It's very confusing and it conveys conflicting emotions very heavily. It's terrifying yet alluring, disgusting yet beautiful. This book is written by David Sodergren, a fellow pug lover, by the way, and the book itself is called The HAAR. But in spite of the common saying, I did judge this book by its cover, and I was very intrigued by it. What is this thing on it? So I looked at the reviews, and it had better reviews than any splatterpunk book I have covered thus far. Now, normally I try to stay in the splatterpunk genre. It is still kind of considered splatterpunk, but it almost feels like a folk tale and romance and a bunch of other genres all in one. So, intrigued, I bought it, and I was thoroughly surprised at how amazing it was. This might be my second favorite book I've ever read for review, second only to House of Leaves. I think this book could genuinely be made into a movie very easily, and if I had the money I would love to do it myself, but I am a broke college student and cannot. However, it is not nearly as gross or gory or extreme as any other splatterpunk book we've read. It has a little bit of it, yes, but I have also seen several movies that are way easily worse than this. Now, in regards to the title of the video, the best monster in horror, we will get into him, but I do truly believe, in my opinion, it is the most interesting and intriguing monster in any horror book I've ever read. Because like I said a few seconds ago, it is both terrifying and extremely alluring. And really quick before we get into the summary, usually how these type of videos go is I will start with an intro, where I will introduce the book and slightly talk about how I feel about the book and a little bit about the author, like we're doing now. Then we go into the summary, which is the longest part of the video, where I summarize the book and give commentary on it with some gameplay of some stupid game in the background, so we don't have a black screen. But when necessary, there will be images on screen to describe stuff. And then finally, the last part of the video, where we will analyze the book and discuss themes and messages of the book. It is truly like an extreme book club in a way. And finally, the last thing I have to say before we start this book is it has a lot of Scottish slang and speech, so at times it's very hard to understand. So I might get some really small details wrong because I am stupid and I'm not great with Scottish slang. But I will try to translate as best as I can. But you can just yell at me in the comments if I get anything wrong, and I'll heart them so I can understand slightly better. Anyway, make sure to like and comment to help this video spread in the algorithm, and let's get right into the summary of The HAAR by David Sodergren. Muriel McCauley was an 84-year-old woman when she first saw someone get turned inside out. But blood never really bothered her, ever since she was the first on the scene of an accident in 1966, where a boat crashed ashore her little Scottish fishing village and bodies were flung everywhere. During that little event, she helped clean up all the bodies before any of the police got there, and then made lunch for everyone while she waited for the police to come and collect the little bits and pieces of humans that were left. Gross things like that never really bothered her. However, the thing that did bother her were the suits that kept coming to her door every day to try to buy her property off her to build a golf course on it. A woman, no older than 30, was beautiful, had perfect teeth, blonde hair, and an American accent, and she kept coming to the door on behalf of Patrick Grant, a billionaire. She offers Muriel tons of money for her house, and she said that she would be a fool to pass up this much money. Muriel says that she's been called a lot worse than a fool in her 84 years. She wants nothing more than to punch this lady, but she's so old and she never loses her temper anyway. The woman asks if she can talk to Muriel's husband to get all of this cleared up, but Muriel says that he's been dead for 12 years now. Billy, her husband, had left her with a son who moved out 40 some odd years ago, and a grandson who was in his 20s named Jack. This land and this house that her husband and her had built is all she has left in the world. She wasn't going to sell it to some American billionaire so he can build a golf course. He doesn't even come himself. He sends this lady, like some vacuum cleaner salesman, to go door to door to sway her. Which, on a quick note, that is really weird that a door to door vacuum cleaner salesman was mentioned here, as the book that we covered last also dealt with a vacuum cleaner door to door salesman, and that book was The Slob, so that was a really weird coincidence when I started reading this book. Anyway, the American tells Muriel that she's making a huge mistake. Muriel says that Witch Haven has been here since the 1800s. This city is not going anywhere now, and this is her land. The American lady says it's actually Patrick Grant's land. They actually just keep moving up property lines, illegally mind you, but when you're a billionaire, you can get away with slimy stuff like that, Muriel thinks. Muriel tells the American woman to double her offer and then shove it up her ass. The American woman says that she's not going to take no for an answer. Muriel says, "That's it, she's grabbing the shotgun." The American woman staggers back, and then Muriel runs with her little old lady legs inside and grabs something. The American woman then turns around and runs for her life and trips in the mud and gets covered in it. And Muriel comes out with a broom, not a gun. The American woman feels embarrassed and leaves. Muriel won this day, but how many more days could she fight against the richest man in the world? They will keep coming back for more. The rest of the day passed like any other. She fed her chickens, chopped firewood, and drank tea. She worries that Patrick Grant will get his way sooner or later. Laws don't apply to you when you're rich, she thinks. The local and federal government were happy to take his money for the land and not ask her about it. As she chops the wood, she thinks that she would like to use this axe on Patrick Grant's face. No. She was a peaceful woman, she thought to herself. She married Billy so long ago, and now he's gone. What would he think of her thinking like that? Where would she go if Grant got his way, though? Her son wants her in a home already, but she says if it's her time to die, it's her time. She doesn't need to be in a home. And her son hated when she said that. But how long could she last against this man? That night, Muriel was in the city council for Witch Haven. And by city council, I mean the remaining 7 residents of this tiny town sitting in Terry Monroe, a retired lawyer's, kitchen. These 7 old people are the last remnants of those who have not taken Patrick Grant's money. For these 7 people, Witch Haven is all they had left. Everyone else had taken the money because why would they not? They were young, and this money was more than the whole city made in a year for each person that took it. Progress waits for no one, right? Arthur, Muriel's best friend and who was once her husband's best friend and rival, boomed out that those Americans were out here again yesterday. Not only that, they keep making tons of noise to drive all of them out. Another member, named Jock, says that they offered him $250,000 yesterday for his little house. What's he gonna buy with $250,000 at his age? A gold coffin? Which, looking it up, that's only $44,000, and that's a lot cheaper than I thought it would be. Terry looks over to the youngest of the group, Davy and Lorraine Farquhar, who are standing silently, which according to Arthur isn't like them at all. These 2 people say, well, you know. Everyone already knew what they were about to say before they said it. They took the offer. They all chastised these 2 people for buckling, but they said that they can't fight this. The Grant organization has no morals, no compassion. They leave the construction equipment on all night near the remaining houses to literally annoy them out of their house. Taking the money is the best they're gonna get. Arthur says that they can fight and they will fight. Davy says that this isn't Judge Judy. Any judge will side with Grant with all the money and lawyers that he has. Arthur says that he still has the deed to his land, and once again, Davy says that no one will respect that with the money that Grant has. The 2 apologize and they say that they wish the rest of them the best in their fight for Witch Haven. They really do. And Davy and Lorraine leave the city council. Now there were only 5 people left in Witch Haven. Arthur and Muriel left the house late at night and headed home. It was raining. Arthur jumped on his tractor and asked Muriel if she wanted a lift. She basically tells him to fuck off, old man, but in like a joking way. Remember, they're like best friends. He basically says, okay, she better hurry though if she wants to make it before the new year. She calls him a cheeky bugger and starts walking. But Arthur just slowly follows her little old lady walking his tractor. He says he can leave her alone, can he? In the rain? She says he's a fool, but whatever, fine. She gets on the tractor and Arthur says that he can't believe that Davy would sell out like that. Muriel says, well, I mean, they can't fight forever. They're old. When was the last time that either her or his family came to visit either of them? Arthur ponders for a moment and says, about 2 Christmases ago. He cuts the engine to talk with Muriel in silence. And Muriel says that, well, it doesn't matter. She'd rather die than sell her house. But are they just stubborn old goats holding on to the past? She reminisces about how she's lived in Witch Haven her entire life. There was a little cave down by the beach named Rory's Cave where Billy proposed to her 50-odd years ago. Back then, there were no pollution or even roads. He got home early and set up all the candles in the cave and got down in one knee. But she couldn't finish reminiscing about the story without crying. Arthur consoles her and says he knows. Billy was a good man. Just then they hear an engine start up that is not the tractor. They look up ahead and they see it's a grant organization truck. A man stops them and says that this road is for work vehicles only, and for the grant organization at that only. Arthur says like hell it is. This is the road to Muriel's house. The man says, well, he needs to see some ID at least. Arthur says no, he does not. If he doesn't let them through, he will literally run him over. And Muriel says, well, he better listen. He will actually do it if he came to that. This man was crazy. He didn't care. The worker says, fine, they can pass. Arthur says, you're bloody right we can, you wee gobshite. And then flips him off and they trot along. Muriel cries out that, her cottage! Arthur asks what is it. He can't see in the dark and he doesn't have his glasses on either. They were bulldozing her cottage right now. Arthur kicks the tractor into gear, and by that I mean an extra 5 miles per hour. And they get there, and the organization is in fact trying to bulldoze Muriel's house. And as they get there, they're just bulldozing the chicken coop. Muriel jumps off the tractor out of breath, her heart beating out of her chest. She wheezes, what are they doing? This is her house. The worker comes up and says, no ma'am, and pulls out a map, saying that, see, this here coop was on grant property, and it has to come down. He says that's not the real map. They moved up the property line again without asking. The man gives a shit-eating grin and says, well, take that up with your lawyer. Arthur gets out of his tractor and pulls out a shotgun and points it at the man who's taken aback. He calmly says he's just following orders. Arthur says, yeah, just how like the Nazis just followed orders. The man nervously says he won't shoot, he wouldn't dare. He then blasts the ground in front of the man and Arthur says, sorry, his aim isn't what it used to be. Next time, though, he won't miss. The man says he'll regret this. He'll be in jail by the end of the night. Just you watch. And he leaves with his men in the bulldozer. Arthur gets Muriel inside. She's clutching her heart on the ground. Arthur lifts her to her feet and gets her inside, a sharp pain stinging in her side. He puts on a kettle and gets Muriel down on her knitting chair. It always calmed her down to knit. Arthur says he'll come by tomorrow to fix the fence in the chicken coop himself, don't worry. But they'll be back too. They both agree. It's not a comforting thought, but the truth rarely is. They both look at a picture of Billy on the mantle of the fireplace. Arthur asks if she thinks that he's looking down on them. Muriel says that maybe she'll see him soon, under her breath. And with that, she starts to fall asleep and Arthur takes his leave. But deep down, Muriel wouldn't mind if she didn't wake up from this sleep. Though the next day, she did wake up. She woke up with a beautiful sunlight streaming through her windows from the sea. She turned on the water to get a drink, but because of all the industrial stuff going on outside around her, the water comes out black at first. Flint, Michigan looking ass. And she has to wait a few minutes for it to get clear. She looks out the window and sees the HAAR, which, if you don't know, the HAAR is a freezing fog that creeps in from the sea in the morning in Scotland. Like a haboob, but for the Scottish coast, I guess. When Billy was alive, he used to tell her sea stories about how harpies and mermaids used to come out during the HAAR. She got the glass of water, which finally was clear, and took her meds, and she started getting ready to go out. But then she turned on the TV while she waited for the painkillers to take effect. She looked and saw the news, and she was about to turn it off when she heard Arthur's voice boom from the television, so she stopped. He was getting arrested for last night. He asked why he was getting arrested. He was innocent. The newscaster says that the Grant organization has had pushback before, but this is the first time that someone has resorted to violence against them. Muriel thinks to herself, this is ridiculous. They're taking their land. It's not violence. They then call Patrick Grant via satellite to get his statement on this. He smugly says that he's not going to press charges. What would he sue him for? Dirt? The newscaster suppresses a smile, but Grant says, no, he pities this man more than anything. Arthur is clearly mentally ill, right? She couldn't take any of this blasphemy anymore, but she couldn't stop watching. She couldn't turn off the TV. Grant says to all of the residents of Witch Haven, just take his offer. Muriel turns off the TV and decides to calm down by walking in the brisk Scottish morning air. Perhaps to Rory Cave. To reminisce about her life, maybe. She got all of her clothes on, and while she walked down to the beach, she heard and saw all of the excavators and machinery and thought to herself that the Grant organization had no morals at all. He would crush those beneath him with money to get whatever he wants. But worst of all, he destroyed the beautiful Scottish landscape. Before she gets to the cave, she looks out over the ocean and sees a beautiful display of rainbow lights over some rippling water. What the hell is that? A buoy? Strange. It was pretty though. But she got to the cave around lunchtime. She heard voices in there and she was a little disappointed. But who could blame them? This cave was beautiful. She used to come down here when Billy was alive and out at sea, and she would just sing. She started to sing just like that again for the first time in a while when a scream rings out. A naked, pale woman runs out of the cave and falls down. Muriel goes over to offer to help when a man runs out, naked as well. The man runs over to her and, out of breath, tells her that she's trespassing. Ah, this is Connor Grant, Patrick Grant's son. He's in charge of the day-to-day operations while his dad is away in America. Muriel looked at them and saw that they were acting really strangely. Drugs, she figured. She tells them she's gonna call the police on them, but Connor says, who do you think owns the police, you old bitch? He says that he does, just like he owns this woman here. He slaps her ass and she laughs and tells him to stop messing around. Muriel grips her walking stick tight, suppressing the urge to hit Connor with it. But then Connor shoves Muriel down. Not that hard, but she's an old lady and she stumbles down. Oh shit, bitch went down, the young lady laughs to herself. Connor laughs and says that maybe she wants some. She hears old ladies give the best head. He then takes her stick and whacks her hard in the ribs with it and kicks her. The young lady eggs Connor on, telling him, yeah, beat the old bitch black and blue. And he does that for a few seconds and then stops. He says, wait a minute, he knows her. She's the bitch who won't sell. Well, after this, he's gonna make sure that she doesn't get a dime, and worse, she's gonna leave this place in a body bag instead. He throws her walking stick near the ocean and walks away. Before that even happened though, Muriel had passed out from the pain. She's so old that she bruises when she bumps into a dresser. This was gonna leave a serious mark. She wakes up a few hours later and grabs her stick and realizes her ribs feel like they've been electrocuted. Maybe broken. And I've bruised ribs before, and I'm 26, and I didn't want to move when that happened. I can't even imagine what it'd be like to break them at my age, let alone 84. Muriel thinks to herself that she wishes the tide would just come in and wash her away. Wash her away from golf courses and the Grant development. Just wash her old body away to sea. Muriel gets up and headed toward her cottage again. The lighthouse shined around the city, though it was nearly deserted now. The only sound, the heavy whir of machinery. Not even the waves could be heard anymore. The sea was still beautiful, though. Billy used to invite her out on the fishing trawler, the worst OSRS minigame, though she would always refuse. She was married to a fisherman, but she was scared of the ocean. How ironic. She wobbled her way towards the cottage, but she was still on the beach. Her legs and ribs hurt impossibly bad. Though when she looked over her shoulder, she noticed the HAAR was coming in again. Great. Just her luck. She knows what to do, though. Just stand still and wait. It will pass. What was that? Who was that? Connor coming to finish the job? No, it wasn't an American accent. In the deep fog, she saw that rainbow light again she saw over the sea a bit ago. It was in rainbow fractal patterns, just floating on the beach over the sand. The light poured out over the sand, all still in the fog.
Hurry.
She walked up to it and she thought she was going crazy. She looked down and saw it. The creature. It was just a blood-red blob. No, it was deep blue. No, it was forest green. It was almost in the shape of a human, but it wasn't quite right. It had no lower half, and little blobs pooled all over. Little veins reached out from every part of the blob. A milky white eye floated around in there somewhere. Muriel reached down and asked, "What are you?" A little vein reached out from this creature and wrapped around her little finger. The creature looked at her. Then her hand felt numb. No, not numbness. It felt like something. It felt like relief, but not quite. Her ribs felt better, though. No, not better, but younger. She felt like she was in her 20s again. She didn't understand what was happening. The color then faded from the creature and it became translucent. Muriel just tells the creature to wait there. She got up and she started towards the cottage. But halfway there, she realized she forgot her walking stick by the creature. But only then she realized she no longer needed it. She got home in 5 minutes, a walk that usually took her 20. But she got home and realized that not only did that thing make her pain go away, it made all her pain go away. Little old lady aches and pains from before Connor Grant beat her were also gone. She went out back and grabbed the wheelbarrow and ran down to the beach. The wind on her face made her giggle. She hadn't felt this spry in years. She got back to the creature and tried to pick up the creature, only for it to slide through her hands like slime. How was she going to do this? The eye on the creature watched her struggle, and with a little bit of strength it had left, it sort of scooped itself into the wheelbarrow, which was now on its side. She carried the creature back up to her house, and it was dark by the time she got there. She didn't know what this thing was, but it was alive, and it was hurting. All of God's creatures deserved a chance to live, she thought. Even Grant, begrudgingly. She put this creature in a bathtub and poured water from the spigot out on it. She wondered if it needed to be in salt water, but the creature sort of floated to the top of the water, and then it floated down. It floated up and down, appearing to enjoy itself. She sat there and watched it for 8 hours when all the pain and exhaustion came back. She let this thing stay in the bathtub as she took some painkillers and went back down to sit at her knitting chair. She had to call Arthur and tell her about this, but that's right, he's in jail right now. Maybe this thing could save the town. It's a new species discovered. Maybe some biologist would declare this place protected or something for this thing. She heard voices in her head, but they were all indistinct. Maybe her imagination. She felt her eyes get heavy as she heard Billy say, "I love you." The next morning she went back to the tub to see the creature again. She told it good morning and she put her hand in the tub and it wrapped around her hand like an excited squid or something. It gave her that feeling again. This time she could place it. It was euphoria. She felt giddy, happy. She smiled and said, "You need a name." She went through several musicians. Frank Sinatra? No. Kirk Douglas? No, that doesn't fit either. What about Avalon, after Frankie Avalon? Yeah, that seems to fit. I would have gone with Homme after Josh Homme, but that's just me. It said in her head. Yes, that fit. It wrapped her around her again and euphoria flooded her body. But it started tensing up, very tightly like a blood pressure checker. She told Avalon that that was too tight in a soothing voice, and then a prick. It had bit her a little. She pointed her finger at Avalon like a dog and saying, "No, bad Avalon." Then a knock at the door. She tried to get up and get there, and the knock kept coming. Arthur rang out from the other side saying he'll kick the door down if she doesn't answer. Muriel says he'll do no such thing and then opens the door and smiles. Arthur says he was released this morning. Grant dropped the charges. Grant looks like a merciful man, and Arthur looks like an old freak with a shotgun. Great. Muriel thought to herself that she could tell Arthur about Avalon, but for some reason, she'll wait till later to tell him about that. They sit down for tea, and Arthur notices some blood trickling down Muriel's arm. Arthur gets up and asks if she wants a bandage, and he'll get it. Muriel springs up way too spryly for a woman of her age and suspiciously just says, "I'll get it," remembering that the bandages are in the bathroom. She walks over and Arthur comments on how she's a little different. She's glowing and spry for an old bat, and he laughs. She goes in and Avalon is trying to get out of the tub. She points a finger at him again and says, "Stay." She bandages her arm and shuts the door behind her. Arthur just waiting in the kitchen. Muriel says she's glad he's back and everything, but if it's okay with him, she kind of wants to be alone today. Arthur says that he completely understands, and he leaves. As he's at the door, he's about to say something, but Muriel slams the door in his face. She goes back to the bathroom to see those beautiful rainbow fractal patterns all over the walls again. She tells Avalon, "Oh, it's beautiful, Avalon." Was that? No, it couldn't be. Muriel looks at Avalon and asks if that was him. She has to tell her if that was him, seemingly being horrified about what she just heard. A little blood trickled under the bandage and fell into the tub. Avalon's veiny appendages light up and almost grab at it. Muriel looks at it and wonders if this thing feeds on blood or something. She says she'll give him blood if that's what it takes to hear him again. She takes out a razor blade from the cabinet and positions it over her wrists, her skin sagging and twitching with anticipation. Quickly though, Avalon swims over and uses a veiny appendage and throws the razor blade out of her hand against the wall. It was him. Muriel cried. It sounded just like him. Billy was finally home. She sat there waiting to hear him again in the bathroom for another 6 hours and nothing. Avalon just floated, gray and lifeless with his eye closed. Asleep, maybe. She left the bathroom and wondered if maybe she'd imagined it. It sounded just like Billy. But he died and disappeared in a fishing accident 12 years ago. It couldn't be him. How was this creature talking in his voice? Tears streamed down her face as she lied down. A gentle pitter-patter of rain on the roof and machinery outside. A while down the road, Arthur sat outside his porch listening to the machinery. 5 more minutes, he said. At the stroke of midnight, all the machinery stops. Silence. The way it used to be. At midnight, there was a shift change, and just for a few minutes after, the sound and the silence of nature was the way it used to be. But after 5 minutes, it was over. It's nice while it lasted, Arthur said to himself as he goes inside and lights up another cigarette. He wonders about Muriel. She acted really weird today, but it was probably just his imagination. He turned on the television. There's nothing even good. There's nothing good on, though. Not even Game of Thrones or Breaking Bad. He had always loved Muriel. Romantically, even. But she married his best friend Billy, and that was that. Too little, too late. That's okay, though. He was 88. His best years are behind him. So why does he even bother? Well, Grant has given him a reason to live, at least. To keep him out of Witch Haven. Well, time for bed, he thinks. As he gets up, he hears 3 or 4 people coming up his gravel path. Who is that? There was no groups of kids left in Witch Haven. He had to get a shotgun, but no, the police confiscated it. All he had was a dull kitchen knife, but it would have to do. He heard people whispering outside of his door, and just as he was about to pull it open, they tried the door, but thankfully Arthur had locked it on his way home. He then sighed a sigh of relief. But then he smelled something. Something acidic smelling almost. A little tube came out from under his door and liquid poured out of it. Gasoline. Shit. He had to call the police. But Grant has the police in his pocket. And even if he didn't, it would take like an hour to get here. He had to defend himself now, or he was going to die. He slams the door open expecting to see men, but it's just a bunch of kids. No older than 16. He shouts, "What are they doing?" He was old, but he was still a big dude. He worked on a farm all of his life, so he was in decent shape at 88. He expected the 16-year-olds to run at the sight of the big man with a knife, but they didn't. One of them kicked him just in the right place in the leg to drop him. He was more in shock than in pain that they did this. One of the other ones grabbed the knife from his hand, and another one pinned him down and stepped on his arm and snapped the bone. The bone sticking out of his arm, spewing blood. Arthur gets up and falls and tumbles back into his house, tears streaming down his face. One of them asks where the money is. Arthur, bumbling, unable to form coherent sentences, just points to the metal box in the mantel. Arthur just says, "Do what they gotta do, and then just leave." Crying now. The teenagers just say that some asshole paid them to do this, but this was just extra. Arthur pleads. They dump the rest of the gasoline out as Arthur pleads for the young boys to stop. They can still stop this. One of the boys flicks a lighter over and over and it isn't starting. Last chance, Arthur, he thinks to himself. And with the last bit of strength, he gets up and with his good arm, he grabs the knife with his bare hands and grabs it anyway. The boys laugh at him as he cuts himself on it. "Got it," one of the boys says as the orange light from the lighter whooshes the entire doorway of the house and lights Arthur up as well. He feels immense pain, fire all on him. He's panicking, and he has no thoughts but wanting to jump in water. He lives near water, he has to. But he has no time. One of the boys laughs and says, "Check out this asshole." But that was enough to have Arthur change his mind about water. Instead now, he wants to destroy this boy. Kill him, rip him limb from limb in his last moments. Although his hand was messed up as well as his other arm, he did still have the knife. He ran towards the noise, unable to see anything, and he lunged and plunges the knife into something. He couldn't tell what. His sofa, maybe? His last moments, he did in fact plunge that knife into some flesh. And, believe it or not, his last moments on Earth were surprisingly painless. Muriel woke up to cries. "Help!" someone shouted out. She looked around and thought it was Avalon at first, but when she went to the bathroom to check on him, he was just floating lifelessly as ever. She went outside into the rain and smelled burnt timber. She almost immediately knew what was going on without even seeing it. Someone had to have called the fire department by now. How could they not have? But then she realized this was probably deliberate by the Grant organization. She ran over to the impossible to miss blazing cottage, and when she tried to get close, the heat forced her back. She was unable to get any closer or do anything. About an hour later, fire trucks came. Muriel already knew Arthur was dead, and so did the firemen. Muriel just fell back in the wet grass and cried to herself. Tommy Borden watched as the old woman ran towards the fire away from him. "Help," he said again weakly, but he couldn't get her attention. He had just been stabbed, and his other 3 friends had just left him there. They fucking left him! He walked away from the fire and towards the only other thing he could see, which was another cottage. It was raining and hard to see anything, with the corners of his vision going out because of the pain. He didn't expect getting stabbed to hurt this bad. He also didn't think that he was going to be murdering anyone tonight. They were told the cabin was deserted. But, well, I guess. He stumbled towards the cabin, leaving a bloody handprint on the wall as he caught his breath outside the house. Inside the window, a beautiful display of rainbow lights could be seen. It reminded him of a lava lamp. He opened the door and weakly said he needs help. He looked in the mirror and saw he was really pale, his lips drained of color. He put some tissues over his stomach wound and drank some water from the kitchen sink, after it became clear, of course. He saw an old phone lying in the living room and he thought about calling an ambulance, but he would just get in trouble if he did. He just had to patch himself up, leave, and hope it was going to be okay. Just then, he hears something wet. Like when your shoes are waterlogged and you try to walk in them. "Ma'am?" he called out. He said he needs help. Badly. Silence. Just that wet slapping sound. Closer and closer now. "Stay the fuck back," he shouts, unsure what it was he was even hearing. Something said. He couldn't tell from where. The noise was right on him now. Why couldn't he see what was making it? Just then he steps on something, and his shoes become lighter? Then it was as if he was wearing no shoes at all. And then an immense pain as layers of skin peeled off of his feet one by one, only showing the muscular system beneath his foot skin. He screamed in pain and tried to grab his foot with his arm, but the goo reaches up and an arm appears out of the goo out of nowhere and grabs his hand, doing the same thing to his face, melting his skin off, and then his bones fall out of his droopy hand. He tries to grab the lighter out of his pocket with his other hand when something white appears in the darkness. An eyeball, or something that looked like one. It opens and he drops the lighter in goo, dissolving this lighter as well. An appendage near his foot grabs up his pants and into his asshole, gripping something in there. Something really tight. He tries to grab at the hand with his good arm, but he can't quite get a hold of it. Finally, he somehow does, and pulls with all of his might, ripping his organs and shit right out of his asshole, disemboweling himself as he falls to the ground. He then sees the front of his pelvis dissolving before his eyes, his penis falling off of his body. "My cock!" he screams. His last words weren't very graceful, but they were apt. The police came a little later and talked to Muriel. "Miss McCauley?" she said. Muriel says yes, but "this is arson," she just blurts out. That's the first thing she says. Arson killed Arthur Eastman, perpetrated by Patrick Grant. The police, stunned, say, "This is a serious accusation. Do you have proof?" She says, "Well, no, but anyone with half a brain can see it was Patrick Grant. Having half a brain is a requirement to be a police officer, right?" she said. She then asked why they weren't writing her statement down. Don't they need to write it down? Police look at each other and say, well, they know who she is. She's one of the troublemakers, they say. Mr. Grant is bringing a lot of jobs here, and bring a lot of money into the economy. Muriel says, of course they say that. They're bought out by him. The police say they're just doing their job. Muriel says, yeah, they always say that. The police, just like Grant, are rotten to the core, she thinks. They'll get what's coming to them, she says out loud. The police ask if that was a threat. Muriel, defeated, just says, no, she's just tired. She wants to be alone to mourn Arthur. The police, showing a modicum of empathy, put their hands on her and tell her, please just take the money. It will end all of this. Please, no one else has to get hurt. She says, yeah, maybe she just will at this point, although she's lying. She just wants to be alone. She was old. Lots of her friends and family died in her life, but this was the first time she knew someone who was murdered. She got home and sees a bloody handprint on the wall. Another warning. She was worried and went inside. Maybe it's Arthur's. Maybe he made it out. Maybe he was in her house. Excitedly, she walks in. She walks in and freezes. Blood was all over her living room. It looked like someone exploded in here. She had never seen so much blood in her life. But someone was here. Arthur? She looks in the living room and looks at Billy's old rocking chair. It was facing the window, and someone was in it. She creeped up on the chair to see a naked man illuminated by blue moonlight outlining him. Hello, Muriel, Billy said to her. She stared, struggling to breathe. She just had to close her eyes and count to 10, and this hallucination would be gone. She did so, yet Billy came up and caressed her cheek, blood smearing on her face as he did. A strange euphoria descended upon her again. When she opened her eyes, the whites of his eyes danced in rainbow fractal patterns. Avalon, she said. She asked him, how? How is this possible? Avalon says that all these years she kept him alive in her memories. She never forgot him. Though this Billy looked a bit younger than when he went missing 12 years ago. His body was never discovered. Muriel breaks down crying, and Avalon asks what's wrong, though slowly as if each word was hard to get out. Muriel says what's wrong is she's sitting here with a sea monster with the face of her husband. This isn't real. It shouldn't be possible. Avalon just humorously says he prefers the term sea creature. Avalon says that saying the term monster implies he's evil. I'm not evil, he says, in almost a too pleasant tone. She gets up and goes to the kitchen, where she keeps a bottle of whiskey for when Arthur used to come over. Well, this felt like a good time. She asks whose blood is all over. Avalon just says matter-of-factly, Tommy Borden, which Muriel obviously has no idea who that is. And Avalon says calmly, almost too calmly, well, he's the one that killed your friend. He says he ate him for this as he gestures to his naked form. Muriel rightly breaks down and thinks she's going crazy, but Avalon comes closer to her and she doesn't even notice, saying Billy was always so loud. Avalon is completely silent when he moves. She puts her hand up to Billy's stubbled face. Avalon's stubbled face. She says she missed him so much. He says he has too. Muriel wonders if Billy just said that to her or if Avalon said that. It didn't matter. To her, Billy was home. Muriel went to her room to try to find something for Avalon to wear. A couple of months after Billy disappeared, she threw out all of his clothes to just try to heal. So the only thing she had for Avalon to wear was Billy's wedding suit. She grabbed it and went back out to Billy. Avalon, she reminded herself, not Billy. She gave him the suit and asked Avalon not to track blood through the house. He apologizes and says he won't happen again. She grabbed a mop and started cleaning. She found it strange how fast she accepted the situation. Her entire life, she had little paranormal encounters, or at least she thought she did. So she chalked it up to old age and those little paranormal things she experienced. She was just kind of accepting this. She got all the blood off the floor, but it was really hard for her to get it off the ceiling. So I guess she just, leaves it there. She thinks about Tommy Borden. This blood was his. Though Muriel thinks to herself that it is horrible, Avalon ate him. But she supposes that at least it was a bad person this happened to, but then she stops herself immediately. Thinking like that to herself, she should not be thinking that. But she thought that maybe at least this boy fueled this creature. She could see Billy again if she wanted to play devil's advocate here. She felt appalled by herself due to these thoughts, though. She knocks on the bathroom door where Avalon is, and because he was taking a long time. She goes in and sees Avalon just staring at his shoelaces. Avalon says this cottage is strange, but it's just how he remembers. She asks why he isn't tying his shoes, and he says he didn't find any memories of tying shoes through Muriel's memories or anyone else's. So Muriel bends down and ties his shoes. She says pay attention so he'll learn how to do it himself next time. She thinks back to the fact that Billy had early onset dementia right before he disappeared, and she wondered if this is what her life would have been like if he didn't go that day. Avalon gets up and says that he wants to test out this new body. How about a walk on the beach? Muriel, ecstatic, says, of course, Billy. She has to correct herself. Avalon, not Billy. They walk on the beach and Avalon looks out at the ocean. He says that used to be his home. Muriel says, yeah, it always was. Thinking of Billy that is saying this and not Avalon. Avalon says that Muriel never really got over Billy's death. She used to come out here and wait for him every day to come back. Muriel thought about objecting, but he could see inside her mind almost, it seemed. Arguing with this thing was useless. Avalon asks the life expectancy of a human, and Muriel says around 80, probably? She asks Avalon how old he is. He says he doesn't know. Age doesn't really apply to him, whatever that means. He says he didn't even think he could die until a few days ago on the beach when she saved him. He asks her why she saved him. She said, well, he was hurt and dying. She couldn't just leave him there. Avalon says that many people would have just left him there, so he is in her debt. Muriel pauses and asks, finally, what are you? He just says, he's Billy. Before that, she says, Avalon, he says. Typical Billy being obtuse. Muriel asks what Avalon is or was. He says he doesn't know what he is. He just is. Muriel asks if there's any more of him, like any more of his species. He says, yes, There once was a long time ago. Muriel sheepishly asks if it was like a girlfriend or something. He says no, it wasn't a girlfriend, but he was in love with it. They don't really have gender. He says now, though, he's lonely. Such a sad word, isn't it? Lonely. She asks what it's like to be in the ocean. He says it's a little different than how it is on land, but it's about the same. She is scared of the ocean, she says. Avalon says that she's never been in the ocean. So how does she know it's so scary? Muriel says she used to see Billy off every morning and kiss him goodbye on the boat before he left. The day he disappeared was the first time ever he let her sleep in, and he left a note saying he loved her instead. That night, he never came home. Muriel then asks about the boy he absorbed. He says, yes, Tommy Borden. She asks if he saw Arthur die. He says, yes, this boy did see Arthur die. He was the one who did it. Muriel asks if Arthur suffered or went peacefully. Avalon says, yes, Arthur died in a great deal of pain. His skin cracked and burned, and Muriel just stops him. She doesn't want to hear it. She thought that although he looked like Billy, he didn't use the right mannerisms or figures of speech that Billy would. Billy would curse all the time. Avalon was proper almost. She asks how much of Billy is left in Avalon. He says as much as she wants. If memories are real, then so is he. Muriel leans in for a kiss when Avalon starts trembling. He no longer talks in Billy's voice but his own. He growls, "Get me home." They rush back and he screams the same thing now, "Get me home." Something's wrong. As they open the door, Avalon collapses into a puddle. She tries to catch him, but it's like trying to catch a water balloon. She picks him up and throws him in the tub. He says. She grabs a mop and pours all the bloody water into the tub, but it's too late. Avalon is once again just a puddle. She cries and pounds her fist into the water. "Bring him back! Bring him back!" she yells. Days had passed. Days of pain of Muriel slitting parts of her arms to feed Avalon slightly over and over. Not enough to make him Billy again, though. He needed a full person. Muriel wonders if there would be enough time to talk to Billy again if she did give herself fully over. But she stopped thinking like that. She can't do that. She wondered if there was anyone else she could feed to him, but she quickly shunned that thought. No. The boy that he ate was a bad person. She would not even entertain the thought of doing it again. The next day was Arthur's funeral. She got into a taxi to go off into the next town over, as the cemetery was already exhumed and replaced with porta potties for the golf course in her town. She wore a long black dress that covered her arms so the cuts wouldn't be seen. She got there and Arthur's son and daughter were there, already talking about how they'd spend the inheritance. Not even cold in the ground yet and they already talk like that. But joke's on them. He was poor as dirt. Terry, Jock, and Jan gave some nice speeches and Terry's voice cracked at the end of his, clearly upset over their loss of Arthur Eastman. They all left and the funeral was over. It was a nice service. Terry went up to Muriel and said they've been thinking. Him, Jock, and Jan. Muriel snaps, "Just bloody say it. You accepted Grant's offer." He says, "No, they didn't, but they're going to. They're old. They can no longer fight." Muriel calls him a bloody coward. He killed Arthur, can't he see that? Terry, surprised by this news, doesn't dispute it, but just says, "It's over." Muriel says he is throwing away the town over $250,000. Terry says, well, $50,000 actually. They cut the offer. They waited too long and Grant knows he's gonna win. Muriel says he's pathetic. He used to be a big shot lawyer, right? And now he's rolling over. Terry gets in a taxi and begs Muriel to take the deal. If what she said about Grant killing Arthur is true, she needs to be careful. Very careful. She waves goodbye to him and she thinks to herself, now Witch Haven is 1. Well, 2. She sat in her living room after, watching television. She thought about Arthur and how unfair it was. She turned up the TV as if it could drown out the voice in her head. She wouldn't kill for him again. She wouldn't do it. But would it really be murder? I mean, figure he's not human, he's a creature. Is the spider a murderer for eating a fly? Muriel raises her voice slightly so Avalon can hear her in the bathroom, and she says she can't do anything about that right now. She wished she went out on Billy's boat, just once. She then hears Avalon thrash in the water in the bathroom. Angry, maybe. She was tired of this. She needed to go to bed. Her arms hurt. But just as she got up, she saw the door handle on the front of her door move. Then a kick, and the lock shattered and the door broke open. Two men in all black with their faces covered by balaclavas. She ran to the phone to call 999, but she stopped herself. The police wouldn't get here in time, and even if they did, they wouldn't care. She had to take care of herself right now. There had to be some way for this to be beneficial to her. They rush in and call her a bitch, and one of the men tells the other one to check the rest of the house. One of them looks around and is shocked by all the blood on the wall and the ceiling. He asks if she's a serial killer or something. What the fuck is going on here? Muriel strangely says, yeah, something like that. The other one checks all the rooms for anyone, and as he goes to the bathroom, Muriel holds her breath. This is it. A meal for Avalon again. Guilt-free, too. These people were here to kill her or rob her. No one would miss two more bad men, right? Just then, the guy comes out of the bathroom and says it's clear. They're the only ones there. This shocks Muriel. Why didn't Avalon feast on him? Was he too weak? This was her fault. She didn't give him enough blood. Muriel quietly says, "You're here to kill me, right?" They say no. One of them throws down a noose and says, "You're gonna kill yourself." She asks if they will burn down her house after like Arthur's, and one of the men says, "No, two fires this close together would be suspicious." Muriel says one was suspicious. The two men look at each other and smile. "You're one tough bitch, huh?" He says. She's gonna hang herself. It wouldn't be weird. All of her friends were dead and the others abandoned her. It would only make sense. She looked at them blankly. "How am I gonna hang myself exactly?" she asks. They look up. There's no ceiling beams or anything that could be used for the support of the noose. Muriel says, well, she has a knife. She can cut herself, she guesses. They say, yeah, that's good. Do that. You're one crazy bitch, you know that? They say. She then has an idea. She says, why would she cut herself here in the kitchen when the bathroom would be much easier for them to clean? They agree, and adrenaline floods Muriel. She might get out of this yet. They walk together to the bathroom, and she jokingly lunges at one of them with the knife, and he jumps. She laughs at him for being scared of a little old lady. They then get there, and she takes out her arms. They say, do it. Lengthwise. It's deadlier that way. She starts doing that. She's done it up the past couple days already, but Avalon was there to fill her with euphoria and seal the wounds immediately. But now, she was on her own. She cuts herself and the blood drips into the bathtub, Avalon lapping it up. The next arm now. She feels faint, and as she plunges the knife into her other arm, she falls face first into the tub. The two hitmen take off their balaclavas, saying, well, that was easier than expected. Muriel lies face down in the tub of her own blood. They've done worse, though. One of them doesn't like to look at blood, though, but the other one thinks, well, he's in the wrong line of work. They've done a lot worse to the enemies of Patrick Grant. Alright, let's clean up. Normally they would just torch the place, but this time they have express orders not to burn the place down. It would be too suspicious. They take off their boots and start cleaning the kitchen floor. As they are working on the floor, they hear a bubbling noise from the bathroom that makes them pause. They figure it's just gas releasing from the body. This has happened before. They then talk to themselves. They then ask, what do they think made all that blood on the ceiling? A bear or something? One of them says, no, there's no bears in the Scottish coastline. The other asks, maybe it was a haggis. One of them says, no, it wasn't a haggis. A haggis is small. Which, by the way, apparently a haggis is a mythical creature. And if that's not what they're talking about the food haggis. Just to show how dumb these people are. Then another noise from the bathroom, and then a thud from the hallway. They shush each other. One of them says, no one was here, he checked. The other one whispers, maybe it was a haggis. It didn't sound like an old woman, though. Then the thuds sped up really fast through the door, and whatever it wasn't human. It had half of a penis with gnarled legs. Above the waist, it sort of looked like a man, but it didn't have all the right parts. It jiggled like jello as it ran towards them, and its face was empty, only blinking once in a while with the giant milky eye. It lunged towards one of them and liquefied right in front of them. It soaked into his legs and corroded them from the inside. He didn't stand a chance. It then reached to the other one, and the milky eyeball shattered and melted into his face. Rainbow fractals danced around the room as it went down his throat and into his stomach. The man wondered how he was even alive, the skin of his stomach distending as it moved around in there. He looked at the hallway to see the old woman again, her arms completely patched up. She looked horrible, but alive, her arms now sewed together again. He thought to himself, so there is a God. Then through his mouth, the rest of his body was pulled out, turning him inside out like a pillowcase. Muriel leaned on the doorway as the rest of their bodies evaporated into Avalon, like the beginning of Expedition 33. He ballooned up and resembled a mangled human again. She could only say one thing to Avalon as his disgusted form appeared again, his eye opening and looking at her. Let me see him. The last two living residents of Witch Haven sit in their blood-soaked living room, with the cool blue light of the TV and the moon shining through the window, watching television. Muriel would steal loving glances at Billy. And quick note, the name Avalon is almost never even said again. This is now, for all intents and purposes, for Muriel, this is Billy. Even though it's not fully Billy. Avalon kisses her head and says that she used to love when Billy would do that. She corrects him. When you would do that. He stammers, yes, when I did that, for I am Billy. She shushed him and thought back to Rory's cave. How he proposed to her there, and she talks about how they had sex there, and I will spare you the old lady talking about sex, as although it's sweet, it's kind of cringy to think about. They kissed again, and strangely tons of memories flood into Muriel's head, which I will read in full, as all these memories flushed into her head instantly. All at once, a lifetime of memories flooded over her. There she was, playing on the beach with Bessie, the family Labrador, skimming stones with her friends, hiding in an air raid shelter as sirens blasted through the streets, the sun rising over her hometown of Aberdeen, her first day of school, first day of college, working in the fish market, sitting hunched over her desk sketching, her first dance with Billy at the wedding, pulling a dead man from the sea. Her body jolted. She tried to pull away, but Billy gripped her even tighter. A woman squirming beneath her, naked and screaming with a mouthful of blood. A baby lying in a gutter half-eaten by rats. A pit full of plague-ravaged corpses. Blood pouring down the walls. A child. God, no, she screamed, pushing herself away from Billy, away from Avalon, rubbing madly at her eyes, bile rising from her stomach. She backed up, stumbling over the broken coffee table and falling. Those aren't my memories. Avalon looked at her curiously. No, they're mine. You did those things? You? Not I. The people I consumed. They become a part of me. Their memories live on inside. This is terrifying. This thing, Avalon, is like a hive mind or a collective conscious of everyone it eats. It absorbs people and then becomes them. So it would appear that Avalon is Billy in actuality, but not only is he Billy, he is every single person he's ever absorbed. That includes the two hitmen and the boy that murdered Arthur. However, Muriel never even considers this for the rest of the book. So yes, this is Billy, but she's also kissing the men who killed her best friend and the two hitmen. Sure, he's showing as Billy right now, but he is also them. Anyway, tangent over, let's continue. Muriel is disgusted by this, but Avalon apologizes profusely. He says he slipped. He won't do it again. He's just gonna go to bed, and by bed he means the bathtub. He stalks past her quietly and closes the door and presumably liquefies himself into the bathtub. Muriel also goes to bed exhausted. She has a moment of clarity and she thinks about how many people he's killed. How many times did he rise from the sea and feed on humans? But as soon as she had that thought, she forgets about it. She awakes a few hours later to the starting up of equipment yet again, but strangely, she didn't hear Avalon in the bathtub anymore. She then jolted awake to see someone in her room. Whoever it wasn't breathing. Did Avalon even breathe? But then she realized it wasn't Avalon, it wasn't Billy, it was a woman. A beautiful woman. This woman took her fingers out and attached them to the temple of Muriel's head, and a wave of euphoria and tiredness flooded over her. She fell asleep looking at the eyes of a woman she hadn't seen in 50 years. Herself. Outside, 3 of the workers talk about how much they hate their wives and how they need to upgrade to the, and I quote, younger model. They also talk about Grant's personal assistant, that one from the first chapter, the blonde American woman. They all take digs at each other, saying they wouldn't stand a chance against those American women. They talk about how they hate feminists and how the G-spot isn't real, and how the female orgasm doesn't exist because no woman has ever orgasmed when he was shagging her, which Batman couldn't beat out of me, but not this gentleman, I guess. One of them stops, though. He says someone is striding over to them in the moonlight. He thinks it's a woman, and she's naked. What? This is too strange, way too good to be true to these guys. Her bare breasts just shaking as she walks towards them. They all look at each other, confused. She's naked, and they talk about how they hate her bush or whatever. Weird talk like that. They think she's on drugs. She has to be. Why else would she be doing this? One of them says he doesn't care. He strips down and starts raising his arms towards her, but instead of shying away like he thought she would, she did the same thing and welcomed his embrace and love. One of the other men do the exact same. She looks at the last guy and says, "Come, participate in the reverence." Which, I don't know about you guys, but I would be extremely suspicious about this. And after she says something like that, with a random naked woman who looks to be about 19, pale as snow in the dead of night, speaking like she's from the early 1900s, I would not take my pants off for her, and I would run in the other direction. Well, to this guy, who cares? One of them says, "Come on, it's like throwing a sausage down an alleyway. She's done this before," he yells. As they continue, one of their members pierces straight through her cheek. Whoa. One of them says in bewilderment, not understanding what just happened. Then Denny, the one who mentioned that he hated feminists, screamed louder than any of them had ever heard. A spurt of liquid came out of her mouth and made a line on Denny's stomach, his intestines falling out of his lower stomach. Falling backwards, half of his stomach just melted away pretty much. And the other guy, who was in her ass at that moment, realizes he's stuck. He pulls and pulls. Nothing. He uses his arms to try to push away when little appendages come out of her back and grab him and degloves his hands. And then the rest is pulled in. Little bits and pieces of his 2 friends flowing around her body and her skin like it's water. An eye opens up on her shoulder and peers at the last guy. Little bits of blood splurt out of her and hit the guy, and bits of viscera are all that's left as Avalon laps up the rest of them under the full moon. Muriel wakes up from the dream of Arthur's house burning. She got out of bed to smell smoke. The cottage is on fire, is what she thinks at first. She slams open the door to see Avalon, showing the appearance of Billy again, and he's cooking eggs in his wedding tuxedo. He tells her, "Good morning." And she said he should have been a comedian with that sense of timing with the burning of Arthur's house. Avalon asks what a comedian is. Is that like a court jester, he asks. Muriel says it's been a while since he's been on land, huh? Avalon says he ate a court jester once. He tasted funny. She tells him to sit down and she'll cook instead. Avalon says, "Nothing for me. I'm not hungry." As he says this, she remembers last night. She basically says, "Oh no, what did you do?" He says, "Well, he ate. He's strong again. He thought she'd be happy about that." And she's more confused than angry, asking why would that make her happy? He motions to himself and tells her to listen. Closely. It's silent. No machines whirring, no digging equipment, nothing. Avalon is about to say something else, but she shushes him. A tear falls down her face. It was beautiful. She could hear the waves and the seagulls again. It was amazing. Avalon then asks Muriel if she wants to take a walk. They go down to the beach and start walking. She held Billy's hands. Not Avalon, she thinks. Billy's. She asks how many people did he eat. Avalon says 3 courses. Silent. Avalon says, "You get it? 3 courses. 3 people. I was being funny. Humans like to say 3-course meals, get it?" Muriel says yes, she gets it. She says that he and the other species of Avalon he knew must not have talked normally much. He says no, they didn't. They just mostly had sex, which makes Muriel blush. Avalon says they could do it too, but Muriel denies it. She says she's too old for that sort of thing. They get to Rory's cave. Avalon tells Muriel to close her eyes. He has a surprise for her. She doesn't know why. It's pitch black in there anyway. It wouldn't matter. But when she opens her eyes, just like the proposal 50-odd years ago, candles were everywhere. Not only this, but it was exactly like the proposal, down to the smallest detail, as if it was lifted straight from her memory. She cries and says, "Oh, Billy," it's when she rushes to kiss him, and she puts her hands on his face. But the hands on his face weren't hers. They were young. Not only that, she was young again. She was like a 20-year-old woman. Avalon says this can't last. This kind of thing tires him out. But he can make her young again, if only for a few minutes. Muriel unbuttons Avalon, or in her mind, Billy's shirt. The scene then sort of like cuts. It's heavily implied they have sex. She wakes up on his chest, old again. She wonders how long she had been out. She didn't care though. She says she cannot lose Billy again. He said she doesn't have to. She asks if he has to go back to the ocean, and he says no, he can live on land as long as there's food and water for him. He's lived for eons. He's watched civilizations rise and fall while he's been alive. He is immortal, effectively. He says he will stay with her until the end. But first, he wants her to teach him how to cook breakfast. They stare at each other, and Muriel asks if that was another joke, which Avalon says, "Yeah, I think so." They walk back, and Avalon looked tired. Muriel asks if he's okay, and he says, "Yeah, but he's not feeling well. They need to hurry." Muriel then has an idea. She could go faster if, well, he liquefied himself and goes into her purse that she's carrying. He thought, yeah, that might work. So he starts to sort of melt. Muriel yells at him to take off his suit first as he's half liquefied. He does so and then sort of just pops into the bag, his big eyes staring at her. She asks if he's comfortable in there, to which he just blinks at her. She says she'll take that as a yes. When she gets close to the cottage, she sees that Grant's secretary is peering into the window again, the one from the beginning of the book. She rushes up to there as fast as her little old lady legs could, asks if she's looking to see if Muriel's alive. The lady turns around and looks terrified as if she's seen a ghost, but quickly composes herself and says, "What a pleasant surprise to see her. No, she was just checking in. You see, 3 workers went missing last night." Muriel scoffs and says, "What, you think I killed them?" The lady says that she never said that they were killed. How does Muriel know that? Muriel says she knows nothing. She was sleeping at the time. The lady then says she never said when it happened either. Now suspicious, she asks what's in the bag. Evidence? She then quickly grabs it too fast from Muriel's arms and it falls on the floor, spilling its contents. She just looks at it and says, "A bag of goop. Nice." Not exactly noticing what it really was. Muriel scoops it all back up and stood up. The lady said she missed a spot, and she points at it with her shoe, and Muriel bends down to pick it up, and she stomps on it, presumably to splash it in Muriel's face, but instead of the humiliating reaction she thought she was going to get, Muriel screams, "No, you'll hurt him!" She goes down to the lady's legs and scratches at her legs and pulls down her pants. The lady screams for a worker to get this old lady off of her and then threatens Muriel, saying no one humiliates her like that, even though she already did that earlier in the book. Muriel then steals her nerves and says, "Can you come inside? I actually want to show you something." Yeah, that's not ominous, Muriel. The lady says, "No way." Muriel then gets on the floor and begs, "Please, she'll accept the deal. Just come inside." The lady says she's had her chance. Muriel then just yells, "Get them, Avalon!" And nothing happens. He just sits in his goopy form. The lady, thinking Muriel is crazy, just walks off. Muriel gets up and takes the bag into the house and into the bathroom, calling Avalon a fool for wasting his strength to make her young earlier. Unfortunately, they'll be back. The next day passes silently. Muriel watches TV and was restless. Nothing was happening, but at the same time it felt like it was all coming to an end. She went to the bathroom and saw the razor blade sticking out of the wall from the other night, and she slowly cuts herself on it. She then sits in the bathtub and talks to Avalon as he goopily stretches over her body. She says she doesn't want them to find Avalon. She doesn't want him to go to a zoo or, be worse, cut open in a lab or something. But instead of euphoria filling Muriel now, she just feels melancholy when Avalon touches her. She supposes her life was coming to an end soon. It just felt like it. She had a feeling. She thinks that she's okay with that, though. She doesn't fear death. She's lived a long time. Some days she wished she didn't wake up, but she's now glad she lived this long. Long enough to see Billy again, and to meet Avalon. She thinks to herself, I don't fear death, but they do. She woke up to the sounds of car tires on gravel, loudly. This wasn't just the usual sound of machinery or anything, this was much louder. Closer. Muriel gets out and looks outside. 20 or 30 black SUVs are in her driveway. Among them, Patrick Grant and his son Connor Grant stand. Muriel found this weird because Patrick was supposed to be in America. Why was he here? Last time he was here, the village pelted him with rotten fish, but that's when there were still 20 people not taking the deals. Now, only her and Avalon are left. Connor yells at a PA or something to get him something. Muriel can't hear through the window what it is, though. She comes back with hair gel and puts it on Connor's hair. Are they going to be filming this, she thinks? Among the black SUVs, Muriel sees a white van. One with the name of a local mental hospital on it. Were they going to have her committed? Why? She was a perfect sound mind. Which, I mean, her assistant saw you tell a bag of goop to kill them, so for once I think that kind of makes sense. Obviously, we know she isn't crazy, but it doesn't look good. She thinks to jump out the back window, but then she realized she could never do that at her age. From the window, she hears, Miss McCauley? We know you're in there, come out. She rushes to the bathroom and tells Avalon that they are here. They need to do something. Muriel rushes out and hears people on the other side of the door yelling that if she doesn't come out, they're gonna bust down this door. Muriel grabs an axe just as a bunch of armed men break through the door, and she immediately drops it as they point their guns at her. Patrick comes in and yells at them to put the guns away. The TV crew will be here any minute. Patrick extends his hand and says, Miss McCauley, nice to meet you. Muriel says the pleasure's all his, and screams for Billy, now very scared. His son asks, who the fuck is Billy? Patrick turns around and yells at his son to get this on camera, all while calling him a deadbeat. Patrick says that they came here to pretend to give her an offer. Only they say they're going to lie and say that she attacked them before they could. She calls him a liar, a charlatan. He says, yeah, sticks and stones. He says she's old and poor. Society has already forgotten about her. She's a nothing. Someday in the bath, he might think to himself, what was the name of that old lady I once had committed? It was over. Grant had won. He cheated. The game was rigged from the start, so to speak. Connor says, holy shit, look at her arms. Is she one of those self-harmers? Patrick says, who cares, just get her on camera, it'll help their cause. Connor moved in closer, and Muriel tucked her arms behind her back. She didn't know why she bothered, it would make no difference. Grant was right. He was rich, and she was poor, and that was all that mattered. The wealthy can get away with anything. Murder, even. She considered imploring the guards to do the right thing, appealing to their consciences, but once again, it came down to money. Grant was paying them, not her. They would do anything he asked, which is one of the themes of the book. She wanted to rush into the bathroom and yell at Billy to get them, but it was too late. Muriel just wanted to cry. She just begs Grant to go to the bathroom before they go. He won already. Patrick is suspicious, though. Why? So she can call for help? She says no. He's already won. She breaks down and cries. He says, this is too pathetic, whatever. He says, Shelley, go with her. Make sure that she doesn't do anything stupid. Shelley, that's the name Muriel thinks. That's the woman from the first chapter. And this is the first time her name is mentioned. They go to the bathroom together and Muriel sits on the toilet, saying goodbyes to Billy. Shelley, however, keeps interrupting, asking who the fuck is she talking to? Muriel ignores her and keeps going. Shelley gets angrier and angrier and asks again, who are you talking to? Still ignoring her, Muriel continues. Shelley gets really angry then. She tells Muriel to shut the fuck up and grabs her arm. They struggle for a second and Shelley slips backwards on the bathroom floor, hitting her back on the wall. Her mouth opens and she silently screams as she slides down the wall, blood on the back. Oh no, she hit the razor blade that was stuck in the wall. What the fuck did you do to me? She asks as she gets up and lunges for Muriel, who staggers backwards and a rainbow fractal appears on the wall. A fantastic light show, and Avalon gathers himself up in the tub. Shelly stops and looks at the monster rising from the tub, where she stumbles and hits her head on the toilet bowl. A little arm comes out of the ooze of a man and touches her throat and slips it, lapping up her lifeblood, his veins lighting up with the blood as he feeds. Avalon sucks the fluids out of her until she looks like one of those guys that cell absorbs in Dragon Ball. Muriel just keeps saying, "Oh, Billy," not even caring about the dead Shelly on the floor. "Shelly, what the fuck is going on?" comes from the other room. Patrick comes in and is terrified. Muriel says, "I keep telling her it's Mrs. Macaulay, not Miss." A guard runs in and gets in front of Patrick, pointing a gun at Muriel. They all look at the tub, and one of them asks, "Is Shelly in there?" Another responds, "No, it can't be her in there. Shelly's head was rolling around on the floor." One of the guards pokes the bloody man in the tub with the barrel of his gun. "He's dead," he says. Patrick asks, "Who is it?" The guard picks up the man's head by his hair, and when he looks at his face, well, there is no face. It's an expressionless hole. Little lamprey eels creature bust out from the hole, burrowing into the guard's flesh, wriggling and writhing up and down, feasting on his flesh a little bit at a time. The man panics. He puts his gun to his own arms where some of the eels were and shoots himself 3 times, one of which creates an exit wound and narrowly misses Muriel. Connor Grant, in full flight or fight mode, runs away and slams the door while running, trapping his father in there and hitting his nose on the way out in the panic. The eels rupture from every orifice on the guard's face as he slumps down. The other guard tries to run to the door and open it, but Avalon uses a tiny tendon and extends it out and catches him. He pulls the other guard inside his fleshy stomach and then pulls him out, and his face is burned off and covered in boils. As this is happening, the whole time Avalon starts to take the appearance of Billy again. Muriel's Billy. Soon it would be over and she would be with her love again. Soon... Muriel opens her eyes. She looks at Avalon, who now completely looks like Billy, and he's looking right at her, not lovingly, but horrified. What happened? She tried to ask, but as she opened her mouth, a combination of blood and phlegm comes out instead. She looks down, and Patrick Grant had grabbed a handgun and shot her. Then again, he shoots, and this time he hits her right in the chest. She feels her lungs filling up with blood, and she falls to the floor. He shoots again, but Avalon walks in front of it at light speed, I guess, and takes the bullet instead, doing nothing to him. He slowly walks towards Grant, and Grant asks, "What is he?" He turns around and goes to Muriel first, sticking his fingers in the bullet wound as the flesh contorts around the wound, sealing it. He gets really close to Muriel and asks her, "You want me to kill him?" She says no, but he shakes his head. "Yes, you do. I've seen it," he says, pointing to his head. "In there." She should be dead, she thinks, but Billy saved her. A phone rings and a helicopter is heard overhead. They use the speaker on it to tell her to come out with her hands up. How did it get so messed up like this? She used to be a lonely wife of a dead fisherman, but now, all of this. 2 half-eaten bodies on the floor and little lampreys pouring out of them, wriggling towards Billy to be one with him again. The phone rings again, and for some reason, she picks it up and answers it. Bran? Her grandson Jack is calling. She answers it with a nonchalant, "Oh, hi Jack, how's London?" He says, "Fuck London, what's going on TV? They say you're in a hostage situation." She confusedly turns on the television to see, yes, she is indeed on TV. Words on the screen say her name and how she's involved in a hostage situation with the world's richest man. Jack calls out on the other end, saying that the television says she killed someone. Muriel says, "Don't worry, it's just a misunderstanding." But then she gets serious for a second. She says she loves him, but she didn't kill anyone. Billy did. Jack asks, "Who the fuck is Billy?" He says, "Your grandfather, of course." Jack, now thinking she's crazy because he died 12 years ago, asks what's going on. And then she says, "I love you, Jack. You're a good wee laddie. Tell your dad I love him too. I doubt I'll get the chance. And I think it's important to say goodbye to your loved ones. It's alright, I know what I'm doing. You're gonna read a lot of things about me, but none of them are true. These men, the one from the Grant organization, they killed Arthur Eastman from down the road. They're trying to bully us out of our homes. Shush now, Granny is speaking. I'm going to go outside soon, and I'm not sure what's going to happen, but before I go, I want you to promise me something. If you love someone, tell them. Tell them every day. Never let them forget, and if they go away a while, never forget them." They can come back. Goodbye, Jack. I love you. She turned to Patrick and grabbed the gun from him. Avalon turns to her and says that he can kill all of them if she wants, but Muriel says, no. A lot of them are bad, but not all of them. He asks if she's sure. He can break all of their necks in an instant. It would be fast. She just shakes her head. She's 84. She doesn't have a lot of time left anyway. She just wants to spend the rest of her time with her husband. They kiss, and although the bathroom smells of viscera, it was the best kiss of her life. She then asks Billy if he will accompany her to Rory's cave. 500 miles away, Jack sits with his boyfriend. His boyfriend puts his hand on Jack's shoulder, but Jack just thinks to himself that his Gran's gone mad. But she's such a kind little old lady, there's no way she killed 2 guards of the world's richest man. He wanted to call her when she heard what happened about Arthur's dead body a few days ago, but he didn't because death really scared him, and he hated how his grandma always was so laid back about it. Was what she said about Billy true? He died 12 years ago, he was sure of it. Tears welled up in Jack's eyes, thinking he would never talk to his Gran again. He looked at his partner and told him that he loved him. He's confused. Why do you say that now? He just says he wanted to say it. He was going to say it from now on every day. Their pug jumped between them and sat down with them. His partner pointed at the screen and said, "Look, someone's coming out of the house." Muriel took one final look at her cabin and jammed the gun into Patrick Grant's back and tells him to move it. They walk outside and he tells her that she's making a huge mistake. His men could shoot the penis off a hummingbird. Who the fuck says that? She tells him to move it. A voice rings out over the megaphone telling her to give him up. This doesn't have to go like this. She points it at him and tells him to slowly follow her, and they're going to go grab the wheelbarrow from out back. He says there's no way he's going to get the wheelbarrow and use it like some Mexican. Oh, he's racist too. Nice. He says that he doesn't know what that thing in her bag is. It's looking at him though. She says he better hurry with the wheelbarrow or that thing will disembowel him in front of everybody. She looks out over the crowd of people in her front lawn. There was a fine mist coming from the ocean though. The HAAR was coming in. He says they're gonna kill her and just study that thing, just you watch. She tells him that he's rotten to the core and to move it. A megaphone calls out that if she goes any further, they're going to shoot. She sticks the gun in Patrick Grant's back even harder. Patrick Grant calls out to his men, "Don't do it, just listen to her, she'll actually do it. Her and that..." He stops. He couldn't just say that there was a shape-shifting monster killing everyone, they'd think he was crazy. She says, "Go ahead, tell them." He stops. The HAAR closing in hard on their position now. People start calling out that they can't see anything, even with the searchlight on the helicopter. They put Avalon in the wheelbarrow and they start to head down towards the beach. Patrick calls out, "Don't follow us, she'll kill me." Muriel thinks to herself that she's finally gonna go home now. Grant carries the wheelbarrow following Muriel. He could easily overpower her if he wanted, but he was too much of a coward to even try to fight. He falls down and says he can't continue. He's pretty old too, maybe not as old as Muriel, but still late 50s and out of shape. Muriel pistol whips him and tells him to just get going, accidentally shooting the gun as she does and narrowly misses him. They both jump at the noise of the gunshot. Well, at least she knew it was still loaded. She could even feel that in the HAAR the men were still following them, and if at any moment the HAAR dissipates, she's dead. They're close now though. They have to go into the dark cave and she hears Patrick Grant say something as they almost get to the place where Billy proposed to her all those years ago. He was sobbing. "Please don't kill me. Please. I'll give you whatever you want. 1,000,000, 2,000,000, whatever." She ignores him and makes him follow. Once they get to the place, it was once again illuminated by Avalon's soft glow until he was dumped out of the bag and started forming into Billy again. She turns to him and says, "Thank you." "Yes, for what?" She says, "For coming back to her." She loved him so much. In the corner, Grant is muttering to himself, 50 million, stupid whore won't... And as he says this, Muriel turns, points the gun at him, and blows his brains out onto the floor. The bullet ricocheting around his skull as he crashes down. "See, that wasn't so hard," Avalon says to her. She says, "This is goodbye." She loves him so much. The police are heard screaming through a megaphone outside the cave. 60 seconds and we come in, they yell. Avalon says this doesn't have to be goodbye. She says that he cannot kill them all. It wouldn't be right. He says he won't. Doesn't she want to experience the world like Billy did? or in the ocean. See the ocean without the fear. 30 seconds. She asks if it will hurt. Billy says, "I'd never hurt you, Muriel." They embrace and kiss, a warm euphoria rushing through her body. He says, "Don't open your eyes until I..." But she never heard the end of the sentence. The camerawoman outside the cave adjusted her makeup. She asks Scotty if she looks good. He says yes. "All this for a fucking old lady," she says. The cameras roll. They are live. Only when both the camerawoman and Scotty both say in unison, "Holy fucking shit." Patrick Grant exits the cave, naked as the day he was born. They all sort of laugh. Well, Patrick was safe at least, and this would probably be great for ratings. People offer him clothes, but he refuses without saying a word. He walks over to Connor, his son, when... Holy fucking shit, they both say again. Patrick lunges and with his mouth grabs his son's throat and rips it out. Bits of spine in his teeth. The bodyguards form around him, getting in between the police and their boss. They were getting paid a lot, I guess. The camera's cut and the reporter vomits until she takes out her phone and goes on Instagram Live and points it and records the most recorded video in social media history. The video shows Patrick Grant covered in his own son's blood and viscera. He walks up to the edge of the water, the waves lapping at his feet. He turns to the woman's camera and says his last words. "Goodbye, Jack. Remember your promise." He then walks up to his waist in the ocean, and then his neck, and then his head. Then, Patrick Grant disappears into the ocean. The following days were strange. On social media, some people thought that maybe Patrick Grant was on drugs. Some thought he was the new messiah who hated the world so much he killed himself. Some said it was fake liberal news. It was such a hot debate that people had to admit they completely forgot about the old lady who took him hostage. When the guards searched the cave, they found no trace of Muriel, nor Grant's clothes, strangely enough. Years later, Jack McCauley died at the age of 73, taking the secret of what really happened to the grave. His husband of 53 years at his funeral would say that every day he told him that he loved him after that, till the day he died. Okay, there's one more chapter, and I love it so much, and it is so short that I'm going to read the whole thing in full. It's only about a page, so it won't be that bad. The ocean was more wonderful than she dared imagine. It was a different world. A sensory overload that simply increased in magnitude the deeper they descended. Though at first it felt like the overwhelming weight of water would crush them, that sense quickly dissipated as she acclimated. She thought of the strange creatures Billy had described to her over the years. Weird, colorful beasts she now witnessed with her own eyes. She was glad she could finally share the extraordinary sights with them. She felt foolish having missed out all these years. Better late than never, she and Billy both thought. A yawning chasm opened up before them. As they plunged into the abyss, Muriel felt a pang of regret for what she would be leaving behind. Her home, her family, Witch Haven, her entire life. She wondered if the Grant organization would continue to wreak havoc after the loss of their glorious leader, and then realized that it no longer mattered to her. She would never return. Up there, she would be obsolete, a tragic memory. There was no place for her in that world. Not anymore. But she didn't care. Because she and Billy were together again, and they would be forever. Even after she had forgotten all about her old life and who she once was. The names of Muriel and Billy McCauley slowly fading into oblivion as they swam inexorably on. The idea frightened her a little. But the idea would pass. Goodbye, she thought, as Muriel McCauley, 84 years young, let go of the past and calmly succumbed to the darkness of the ocean. That's it. That is The HAAR by David Sodrigin. I actually love this book, and it is second only to House of Leaves to me. I love the monster, and I love the message. I also think it's kind of a breath of fresh air that the protagonist is an old woman. I cannot think of many protagonists in books, and let alone media in general, that are an old woman. Old men sometimes, sure, but an old woman is very rare. They are usually used in media as either some evil witch character or a wise, kind old lady. Never humanized like a protagonist. It's pretty amazing, actually, I think. She's a great protagonist at that, showing it's never too late to go on an adventure and change your life. I also love that the very clearly monster type thing in this book is not fully the antagonist. You almost root for Avalon throughout the book, but you have to remember he's not like a good guy fully. It's a killer. Sure, it's basically an animal and it needs to feed to live, but it uses deception to do so a lot of the time. You might say, well, it doesn't know any better. Oh, it absolutely does. It has probably millions of human consciousnesses in there. And although it is sort of an anti-hero in the story, it could very easily be a horrifying monster in another. This is my favorite type of villain, ones that at one point or another in the story, you root for them. It reminds me of like Griffith or Handsome Jack or maybe even Hannibal Lecter at sometimes. Now, you know it's not right to root for them, but you do anyway. Also, I want to say, although that Muriel is the protagonist, she is not fully innocent in the book. Sure, it's not out of malice or anything, but she absolutely does kill people indirectly. Most of it is completely justified, but people did die because of her. It's not right, but granted, obviously, he's the most reprehensible person in the book, but lives were still lost. Muriel also seems to not fully understand what Avalon is until the very end of the book. Well, neither do we completely, but that's just part of the allure, I think. She seems to fully equate it with Billy. And although Billy is, yes, in there, she seems to think that he is fully in control when this is not Billy anymore, and it almost manipulates her to give her food to live. It's very questionable if Avalon understands it is willfully deceiving Muriel, but obviously I want to hear your thoughts in the comments. Is Avalon aware that it is manipulating Muriel, or is Avalon fully in the right? Or is it more gray like the fog of the HAAR? I really want to hear your thoughts. But anyway, with that rambling over, I want to go over the themes and messages like we always do, so let's get into those. I feel the message I get most from this book is, well, love can be used for wondrous good or horrible evil. The most prevalent message of the book that gets repeated over and over at the end of the book is, tell your loved ones you love them, because you never know when you're going to run out of time. On the other side of the coin, though, Avalon uses this love to kill people. It uses Muriel to kill people. Now, they deserve it, obviously, but he is still killing and eating people, and absorbing them into his consciousness. The next message or theme is obviously it is super easily to manipulate anyone and everyone if you have the money and power to do so. The world's richest man in our world could do this easily, and I mean, you know, I'm not going to say it, but you know what I'm saying. Another one of the themes and messages that didn't completely fully stand out to me at first is that nature will always win out over those who tried to destroy it. The only reason this was stopped was both the HAAR and Avalon himself. Both things made purely of nature, almost specifically there to resolve the problem of the man destroying this nature. And in the end, nature reclaims what it had lost. I'm sure there's even more messages in this book that I missed, but I want to hear what you think the messages of this book are in the comments, as I truly do love this book. Thank you for watching. I really love this book, and I think that Avalon is the best horror monster I've read about. It feels almost like a folktale-like thing. If you love someone, tell them that you love them. And in that vein, I love all of you for supporting me in my dreams in these little videos. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.